At the dawn of the 4th century, the Roman Empire was an absolute mess. It was fractured, bleeding from decades of civil war, and was being run by a whole committee of rivals. It was a system that was basically designed to fail. And yet somehow, out of all that chaos, one man would rise up and reunite the entire Roman world under his command. The story of his rise is just incredible. It's a masterclass in raw ambition, brilliant strategy, and, well, what some people would call divine intervention. So how in the world did Constantine manage to outmaneuver and outfight all of his rivals to become the undisputed master of Rome? Well, let's get into it. Okay, so to understand how this happened, we need to set the scene. Our story really kicks off during a time of major instability. The great reforming emperor Diocletian had retired, and the really complex four-ruler system he created, it started falling apart almost immediately. This power vacuum was the perfect storm and the perfect opportunity for a young, ambitious general to make his play. And things unraveled fast. I mean, really fast. In just 3 years, the empire completely descended into turmoil. Emperors are dying, armies are just proclaiming their own generals as the new emperor, and the rulers sent to restore order, they're getting defeated and killed. It was a total free-for-all. And in all this chaos, two names really started to rise to the top in the West, Constantine and Maxentius. So who was this Constantine guy? Well, he wasn't just some random general who got lucky. He was the son of an emperor, and he was raised right in the heart of imperial power at Diocletian's court. He learned how to run the government, but more importantly, he learned how to command armies and, crucially, how to win their loyalty out in the eastern provinces. He got so popular, in fact, that the senior emperor Galerius got really nervous. So nervous that Constantine had to make a daring escape to join his father. And his timing? It was absolutely perfect. With all this instability, a direct confrontation was pretty much inevitable. The West was in chaos, and the stage was being set for a major showdown between the two most powerful men in the region. You had two men with very different claims to power and very different reputations. And when you look at these two, the contrast couldn't be more stark. Constantine, he built his power base out in the western provinces, places like Gaul and Britain, and he earned a reputation for being a steady, stable ruler. Maxentius, on the other hand, he went right for the heart of the empire, Rome itself, by tapping into all this local resentment. So you have the proven commander on the frontier versus the guy holding the capital. And let's be clear, Maxentius was a formidable opponent. This wasn't just some usurper waiting to be knocked over. He had already defeated and killed one emperor, Severus, and he forced the senior emperor, Galerius, into a humiliating retreat from Italy. The guy was dug in, and if Constantine wanted to take Rome, he was going to need more than just a good army. And this is where we get to the most legendary moment in Constantine's entire life. It's the moment that transforms what was a political civil war into something much, much bigger. You could almost call it a holy crusade. He made an absolutely massive, all-or-nothing bet. Constantine left his secure territory, crossed the Alps, and invaded Italy with a smaller army. Think about that. He was outnumbered, he was on enemy turf, and he was marching toward one of the most heavily fortified cities in the world. By any conventional military logic, this was a reckless, almost suicidal move. But then, something extraordinary is said to have happened. According to the histories, Constantine looked up into the sky and received a message, a divine promise of victory. That message, famously translated as, "In this sign, you will conquer." Now, was this a genuine miracle, a brilliant piece of psychological warfare, a sudden, sincere conversion? Honestly, we'll probably never know for sure, but the effect it had was profound. Constantine claimed he saw a cross in the sky over the sun, and then, that night in a dream, he was told to use that symbol. He immediately ordered his soldiers to paint the Chi-Rho, a Christian symbol, on their shields. Suddenly, his army wasn't just fighting for him anymore. They believed they were fighting for a higher power. So, armed with this powerful new conviction, Constantine's forces arrive right outside the walls of Rome. Everything, the entire war, the future of the empire, it all came down to a single, decisive battle at a place called the Milvian Bridge. The battle was really decided by one catastrophic mistake by Maxentius. Instead of waiting safely behind Rome's enormous walls, he chose to come out and fight in the open. A terrible decision. Constantine's smaller but much more disciplined army charged and just shattered the enemy lines. The retreat turned into a panicked rout, a mad dash back toward the bridge, which immediately became a death trap. And in all that chaos, Maxentius himself was pushed into the Tiber River and drowned under the weight of his own armor. And just like that, with one battle, it was over. Constantine marched into Rome not as a conqueror, but as a liberator. The people welcomed him. He was now the sole ruler of the entire Western Roman Empire. But the East was still under someone else's control. So now that he had the West completely secured, you might think Constantine's next move would be another war. But it wasn't. It was a strategic alliance, a brilliant political move that would lead to one of the most important policy decisions in all of world history. At this point, the Roman world was split right down the middle. You had Constantine in the west and an emperor named Licinius in the east. To keep the peace, they formed an uneasy alliance. And to seal the deal, Licinius even married Constantine's sister, Constantia. And together, they issued what's known as the Edict of Milan. Now, this wasn't just some minor law. This was a revolution. It officially ended all religious persecution, especially of Christians, and it guaranteed freedom of worship for everyone, everywhere in the empire. So why is this such a huge deal? Well, for centuries, Christians had faced these brutal, on-again, off-again persecutions from the state. The Edict of Milan put a stop to that, for good. But notice, it gave freedom to all religions. This was an absolutely brilliant political move. It was designed to bring peace and stability to an empire that was just exhausted by religious and political conflict. But let's be honest, this is ancient Rome we're talking about. Power-sharing deals rarely last. An empire this huge, ruled by two very ambitious men, it was only a matter of time before they collided. The alliance really was doomed from the start. And here's how it all fell apart. First, Licinius secures his control over the entire East, so now he's feeling pretty powerful. Then, tensions start to rise. He begins to see the Christians in his territory as a potential threat, like a giant fan club loyal to Constantine, and so he starts persecuting them again. This was a direct challenge to Constantine and his new policies. By 324, it was open war, and Constantine, who was just the better general, completely crushed Licinius's forces. With the defeat of Licinius, the long, bloody cycle of civil wars that started way back with Diocletian's retirement was finally over. The Roman Empire was whole again. And at the top stood just one man, Constantine the Great. From a shaky claim in distant Britain to the absolute master of the entire Roman world. It was an incredible achievement, no question. But it does leave us with one last big question. By forging this new, unified Christian Roman Empire, did Constantine actually save it from collapse? Or did his actions just set it on a completely new path, one that would eventually lead to the fall of the West and the rise of a new empire, Byzantium, in the East? That's a complicated question, and probably a story for another day.